Welcome to this Edulastic review of the Pythagorean Theorem. If you have Edulastic as an educator, the link to assign this assessment to your class is included in the description below the video, and the link is there for you to make, and it's a public link within Edulastic, so you should be all set to assign it to students. If you're a student or someone that's just looking for a review on the Pythagorean Theorem, you can go ahead and complete the problems and hit pause while I am giving the answers. Complete your work and hit play when you're ready to correct your work. So interactive whether you have Edulastic or not. So let's start with question 1. They're asking us to drag and drop a number into each box so that the numbers represent the side lengths of the triangle that is shown. So here I am given this empty box, and let's review. This is a right triangle. I know it's a right triangle because of this box, this square in this corner, making this a 90-degree angle. And a right triangle, we know that we have two legs. Legs form the right angle, and the longest side of the triangle, opposite the 90-degree angle, is the hypotenuse. And we know that when we have a right triangle, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So when I square this leg and add it to the square of this leg, it will equal the square of the longest side, c, the hypotenuse. So right now I'm missing side b and side c if I assume that a is 6, given this, and I'm going to let that side be that first leg. I know that 6 squared is 36. So now I have all of these values to plug into these boxes, one for each box. So I know that in a right triangle, the hypotenuse must be the longest side. Therefore, this measurement has to be greater than 6, giving me choices of 8, 10, and 14. So I'm going to look over here, and I'm going to start with 8. If this was 8 squared, then this would be 64. 36 plus what is equal to 64? So when I look at that, I can do 64 minus 36, giving me a value of 28. Well, I know that there's no value here that squared equals 28, because 28 is not a perfect square. So I know the hypotenuse cannot be 8. So let's try 10. If this hypotenuse was 10, that would be 10 squared, making this 100. So what would this value be? 36 plus what equals 100? So if you do that math, 100 minus 36 gives me 64. 64 is a perfect square. That would make this 6 squared plus 8 squared equals 10 squared to make a true mathematical statement, because 6 squared is 36 plus 8 squared, which is 64, and together 36 and 64 equals 100. So I now can stop and come back and drag and drop my answers. So the other leg would be 8. And the hypotenuse would be 10. Next. A rectangle and one of its diagonals are shown in this diagram. So they've told us here that this is indeed a rectangle, and that tells me that this is a right angle, because a rectangle by definition has 4 right angles. So this diagonal has now formed a right triangle with legs 15 and 20. So I know that I can now employ and use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A, we're going to let be 15. So 15 squared plus b, the other leg, let that be 20, are going to equal c squared. Remembering that c is our hypotenuse directly across from the 90-degree angle. So 15 times 15, or 15 squared, is 225, and 20 squared is 400. and that sum is equal to c squared. The sum of 225 and 400 is 625. Then find the square root of both sides, and we get that to be 25. 25 times 25 is 625, so the square root of 625 is 25. So I know that answer B is the length of that diagonal. Question 3. If you're solving these as we go along, go ahead and pause, come back and hit play when you're ready to see the answer. So here we have triangle PTU graphed in a coordinate plane, and they are letting us know that each unit on there is 1. They want to know the length to the nearest unit, or side length TU. So this is a diagonal length in the coordinate plane, so we can draw a right triangle. And that will give me sides of, let's add 1, 2, plus 4 more, 6. Then here we're going up 5 plus 2 more, 7. So here's my right angle in my triangle. Once again, I have a right triangle, so I can use the Pythagorean Theorem to find the missing side length. Across from the right angle is your hypotenuse. So this diagonal length in the coordinate plane is C, or our hypotenuse. So let the legs A and B be 6 and 7. So 6 squared plus 7 squared is equal to C squared. 6 squared is 36, plus 7 squared is 49, and that will equal C squared. We do the math and we add this together. 36 plus 49 is going to be 85. Equals C squared. Take the square root of both sides, and we're going to get approximately, rounding to the nearest tenth, I get 9.2. Equals C, or the hypotenuse, the diagonal length, which is side TU of this triangle. They asked us to go to the nearest unit, so the answer here would be C, or 9. Question 4. We have a map. Aaron drew a map showing the locations of 2 cities, Odin and Lundy, on the grid. And they have shown us the scale and the map. So again, each square on this graph is 1 unit, and they've given us a scale that 1 unit is equal to 1 mile. So he's drawn a straight line, which is a diagonal length in the coordinate plane. So we know, here's our choices down here, we know that we can use the Pythagorean Theorem to find this diagonal distance in the coordinate plane. So we're going to turn this into the hypotenuse of this right triangle. So here's my 90-degree angle. This is going to be C, my missing diagonal length in the coordinate plane. Now I just need to find the unit measure of each leg. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this leg has a length of 6. And then this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This leg has a length of 8. So again, we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So legs of 6 squared and 8 squared will equal the distance, the diagonal distance, C squared. So 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64, which equals C squared. The sum of the 36 and 64 is 100. Square root of both sides gives me a diagonal length. The distance between the 2 points, or the distance between the 2 cities, is 10. And because each unit is equal to 1 mile, I know that that is 10 miles, or B. Last question. This one has 4 parts. The student has written the equation shown right here. So we have a base of x, exponent y equal to z. So they're saying let x equal 3. My base is 3. My exponent y is 4. What is the value of z? So when you have an exponent, that means repeated multiplication to your base. So this would be 3 times itself 4 times. And that is 81. Part B. What is the value of x in this equation if y is 3 and z is 125? So we want to know what value cubed is equal to 125. Remember, this is repeated multiplication. So we want to know x times x times x is 125. So what perfect cube would be that? And I just happen to know that 5 times 5 times 5 cubed is 125. So the value of here is x. You could also do this by finding the cube root of both sides. And the cube root of 125 is 5. Part C. The student wrote this equation now. So we have radical, radicand, index, all equal to x. And in part C, they're saying let x equal 8 and let your index be 2. Reminding you that this index of 2 is invisible typically. The square root and this are equal to each other. So when you see square root, there's an invisible 2 there. So we want to know the square root of what value is equal to 8. So that means that z is equal to 8 squared. The square root of 64 is 8. 8 times 8 is 64. So z must be 64. Okay, part D. We're using this equation from part C, and we want to know what is y. Y is the value that we don't know. They're telling us that z is 512, and that is equal to x, which is 8. So I'm going to first try 2, because this has to be an integer value. So the smallest value that an index can be is 2, and I know that 8 squared is 64, so I know y cannot be 2. So let's try 3. That would be the cube root of 512 equals 8. So that means that 8 times 8 times 8 must be 512. If you go and check that, it is indeed true. 8 cubed, or 8 times 8 times 8, is 512, meaning the missing value that we're looking for, y, has to be 3. The cube root of 512 is 8. Enter your answer. We can submit our quiz. We've answered all our questions, and our feedback is 8 out of 8. I hope this practice helped. Thank you.